Hi everyone, I'm Ann McElhinney.
And I'm Phelim
And welcome to the Ann Phelim Scoop. It is week 35 of the 2-week Flatten the Curve lockdown. Week 35, by the way. Week 35. That's 8 3/4 months of the 2-week Flatten the Curve lockdown. You remember flattening the curve?
Ronald Reagan is much overquoted, I believe, but he did say there's nothing more permanent than a temporary government programme. So when the next time the government tells you it's just for 2 weeks,
Run for the hills.
Prepare for week 35 and counting.
And counting.
So what's on the show today, Anne?
Well, you won't want to miss our interview this week is with Richard Viguerie, a marketing genius and a lifelong conservative and a giant in the conservative movement. Yeah. We're looking forward to that.
Yes, and a good friend of ours.
Very much so.
And then we're going to look at how NBC used to just push leftist propaganda subtly. It used to be a subtle propagandist in its news and TV programs. But now they've just taken the blinders off and are going, it's just full-on Marxist re-education programs.
Wokeism. And as you know, we were off last week, which was great, and we did miss you, and we did appreciate the really nice messages we got. We're going to come to some of those messages. But the previous week, obviously, we spent the election with the Robertsons, and I decided I've always wanted to be in the kitchen with Miss Kay and Phil Robertson, and we got an opportunity to do that because they cooked for us. So I took a few little short videos, and I'm going to go and show you some of those, of the Robertsons, at home with the Robertsons, doing a little bit of cooking. So that's kind of cool. And we get some tricks from them.
And so with lockdown, and yes, great food. I mean, lockdown TV, we're going to look at the new series of The Crown and our personal connection to it.
Yes.
A second season.
Very personal connection to it.
Second season of The Missing and 90 Day Fiancé The Other Way. We're going to look at that, and we're going to posit an idea that this particular reality TV show is very pro-American.
Can I just say one thing about reality TV show before people start? Because some people are going to look at this and yawn and think, my God, reality TV show. We went to a very nice Shabbat dinner on Friday night with the Praegers and dear friends of them, fantastic a rabbi and his wife in Santa Monica. And and very serious people, and there were other Jewish people there for the Shabbat, and a very serious man opposite.
Probably more PhDs than a...
Oh yeah, then you could shake a university at.
Yes.
And basically, we're all chatting about all kinds of things. And then at one stage, somebody mentioned, we brought up the subject of 90 Day Fiancé and The Bachelor, and one of the most, intellectual looking of the people in the group, this older Jewish gentleman, became super animated and had an enormous amount of things to say about reality TV and about what he felt about 90 Day Fiancé and all these kind of things. Very, very funny. So, but onward, Phelim, tell us where are we starting?
We're also going to be looking at the Obamagate movie, and we're going to be talking
almost
about
500,000
some
people.
of the lovely messages that we've received about Obamagate, and also about our interview with the Robertson family from Duck Dynasty. So that's all coming our packed show. It is a bit of a packed show today. So first of all, we want to go over to our interview with Richard Viguerie. He's a great friend of ours. He was conservative when it was so unfashionable to be conservative. Even the Republicans weren't conservative in the 60s and 70s, where they were pushing abortion, pushing the Great Society, pushing all so many things that the conservatives would be shocked by today, but that was the consensus then. He was a conservative then. He's also one of the youngest 87-year-olds in the world. We recorded the interview earlier, so let's go over to that now.
We're really, really happy to be joined right now by Richard Viguerie, one of our favourite people in the whole world, and the wisest conservative American that we know. And we don't say that lightly. We just love you, Richard. And Richard is very famous for doing a weird thing. So Richard invented political direct marketing. So there used to be direct mail marketing. There used to be direct mail for other things, and Richard invented the idea of doing that for politics. And because of his efforts, Ronald Reagan was elected president of the United States in 1980. It earned Richard the title, the funding father of America.
Yes. So just to explain, people had never thought of writing to people and asking them, direct mail, and asking them for political donations.
So Richard invented that, and that's the least of the, that among all the other things make him an extremely interesting person and very fresh. One of the things I always say, when we meet Richard and we go to conferences and things, and I see your name on the list of speakers, because a lot of the speakers you think, God, I know exactly what that guy's going to say. But with you, No one ever really knows. I'm never sure. You know, you never just know. He's 87 years old, by the way, and works 12 to 14 hours a day, 5.5 days a week. And I think that could be a whole program on its own. But for right now, Richard, welcome to our podcast.
Good to be with my dear friends. Thank you.
So I want to start because a lot of people don't understand. So there was direct mail back in the day, Richard. Like, what did they use it for?
In 1961, I went to New York from Houston, Texas, and I was 27 years old. And for the previous 10 years, I was just consumed with politics. And I am second generation conservative. And 100% of my generation of conservatives, before we were conservatives, we were something else. That was anti-communist. We were, in my generation, late 40s or 50s, first we were anti-communist. So anyway, in the early 60s, I could hear the shots being fired and the war was beginning between the left and the right. The conservative movement was just getting started, and I was anxious to join the battle. So I got the opportunity to become executive secretary of Young Americans for Freedom in 1961, and I went there, and so I'm interacting with Bill Buckley and, Brent Bozell and Frank Meyer and James Burnham and giants of the movement out there. And I'm just a young green kid from Houston, the University of Houston. I didn't go to Harvard, Yale, Princeton. So anyway, I tried to learn what they knew. I started reading all the books, Adam Smith, and everything by Russell Kirk. And after about a year and a half, I made a conscious decision that I wasn't making a lot of progress. And I was never going to catch up with Buckley, etc. But the one thing that I saw that the conservative movement needed was an ability to go around the microphones of the country that was dominated and monopolized by NBC, ABC, CBS, New York Times, Time Magazine, etc. And so I asked to be relieved of all duties except direct mail. And I began to focus on that for a year and a half. And then after, now it's December 1964, and I say to myself, I know everything there ever is to know about direct mail marketing. Of course, I knew nothing. I knew nothing. But the one thing I knew I needed was names and addresses. So in the summer of 64, I discovered that if you were running for president of the United States, you had to file with the clerk of the House of Representatives all your $50 plus donors. So I went down there one day, and there's Barry Goldwater's list of donors. And I began to write, came back the next day, wrote more, wasn't making a lot of progress, so I hired 6 women myself to make a list of all Goldwater donors. And I got 12,500 donors, the donors of $50 plus, 12,500 of them. And so I quit a good job, had one client, Young Americans for Freedom, and then I went where no one had ever gone before, because no one had ever raised money through the mails. It had always been high-dollar fundraising, reception, dinner, smoke-filled rooms, that type of thing. And that changed everything for conservatives, because now we could go right around that monopoly that the left had on the microphones, right into millions and millions of people's homes. And it changed everything. As you appreciate your compliments about me helping Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was a freight train. Anybody running alongside, pushing, and say, "Look at what I'm doing." Well, that freight train is moving. That's Ronald Reagan. But anyway, he did rely on 250,000 small dollar donors, $10, $15, $25, $50 donors, when he ran for president in 1976 and 1980. And that allowed him to compete with John Connally and Jerry Ford and Howard Baker and George Bush, who had the $1,000 donors.
But just to go back before that, just because the history of this is really interesting to me. So before you started writing these letters, and I want to dig into the letters a little bit too after this, but people would write out, companies would write to people. People expected to they got these letters, selling them stuff, selling them things, selling them...
What was direct mail before?
What was direct mail before you? Who was writing?
When I got involved, it was not a mature business. I mean, giants had come before us who were professionals in marketing. People like Claude Hopkins, a giant who was paid $1 million a year to write ads in 1900. And felt he was underpaid, and he probably was. So
tell us about direct mail beforehand. This guy was paid $1 million a year, thought he was underpaid. What was direct mail before you?
Well, it was mostly newspaper ads or magazine ads. Send a dollar in and, you get this little product, or $10 or whatever. It was mostly maybe take out full-page ads for Macy's or Gimbel's. Claude Hopkins, person who probably all of us stand on his shoulders today, he would go behind the counter at Macy's or Gimbel's, Lord & Taylor, and spend a week selling, clothes, perfumes, shoes, whatever, and then write a full-page ad. And, no pictures, just full-page ads. And then people would send in a coupon, and that was it. And when I went to interview in 1961 for my job, my boss, who ran a small public relations office there, had a big file cabinet filled with people's names and addresses, and it had in there Mrs. Jones gave $100 in reply to a Wall Street Journal ad on this date, or $500 to the New York Times ad. And so people responded to ads in newspapers and magazines. That was pretty much it.
And people were used to sending. They would write a check and send a check in the mail to an address. They were used to that. And you just got them instead to send a check to your organization, which was for Ronald Reagan or for whoever conservative,
or Young Americans,
or Young Americans for Freedom, or whoever it was. Well, after that, no, he was on his own.
Yeah.
So you were doing it then for clients, right?
Right. It started with one client. I lost that client after 5 weeks. I got fired. It was a youth organization, and they had coups about every other month. They would have a coup. I got caught up in one of the coups there. So anyway, but I never looked back. I had so much confidence, and by then I had a wife and 2 babies. And so I got those 12,500 names from the clerk of the House of Representatives. And I said to myself, if you have to do that in Washington, D.C., I wonder if you have to do that in Albany and Sacramento and Springfield. And sure enough, you did. So all year long, I went around the country getting Goldwater's donors. And by the end of the year, I had 100,000. And then within a couple of years, I had about 1 million names and addresses. And that was revolutionized the whole political. Nobody had ever raised money like that. Nobody had a list of 1 million conservative donors, and it was just. And it also empowered conservative groups who didn't have to rely on the Republican politicians.
I want to move on right now, Richard, to the present situation. What's just happened, Richard? Did Trump lose?
Well, I assume he's lost. I think that there was probably serious irregularities in the voting process, but it should not have been close. I think it should have been, the Republicans should have got 60% of the vote, Democrats 40%. I think there were 15, 20 issues. Any one of them should have caused the Republicans to get 60% of the vote. It has many, many reasons why. Perhaps the number one reason is COVID, but it's not just the virus itself. It's the fact of the mail-in ballots. That changed everything. When people would just receive ballots in the mail, the harvesting of ballots, and the Democrats pushed for early voting and late counting of the votes. And so if we had not had the situation where they just sent everybody ballots out there and pressing people to vote early, because remember, the first debate, Trump did not do well. There was no second debate. It was canceled. And by the third debate, it was 2 weeks before the election, and almost half the country had already voted. So if you'd had, if he'd done well in the first debate, you had a second debate, he did well, it had been a very different outcome. And we know what happened with the House of Representatives. The Democrats had expected to pick up 10 to 20 House seats. They're going to lose about 13, 14 House seats. They expected to flip 6, maybe, state legislatures. We Republicans flipped 3 legislatures. They did none. They expected to win 40, 50 state house seats. It's going to be reversed, again, Republicans. So other than the presidency, Republicans did very, very well. And I think in 2020, Democrats could be wiped out.
What did Trump bring to the conservative movement? And is there a chance they'll learn the wrong lessons, or will they learn the right lessons?
Conservatives have needed lots of things. We need more money, more organizations, more good candidates, more elected politicians, debaters, magazines, publications, etc. All that pales to insignificance for one thing that we need. We've needed that in 1961. We need it now, and that is leadership, okay? And we need partisan leaders. It's one of the wonderful things about Newt Gingrich. When Newt ran for and was elected in 1978, he was not a conservative. But he was something that very few Republicans are. He was a fierce partisan. And Republicans mostly have people like, Jerry Ford and Eisenhower and the Bushes. they're just not Romney and McCain. They're not fierce partisans. And Donald Trump came in as a fierce partisan, and he made his deal with the conservatives. And in 2016, there were 17 Republicans ran. I supported Ted Cruz, as a lot of my conservative friends did. And I thought after Trump won the nomination, too bad we nominated the one person who couldn't win. The other 16 could have won and beat Hillary. Reverse was true. I was dead wrong. He was the only one that could have won. And to answer your question, Phil, I think that the thing that he brings to the party maybe is energy and a desire to meet the Democrats and challenge them in a way that most Republican politicians have shied away from. You know, the Howard Bakers, Bob Doles. They just don't challenge the Democrats. And the person, you know, if I'm standing next to somebody and I'm pushing them and pushing them and pushing them, that's not a fight. The fight starts when they push back. So now, for the first time in my almost 60 years at the national level of the conservative movement, we have somebody that's really pushing back. And hopefully that will stick with the conservatives, and we will become, and you see that with Mitch McConnell. He's much more aggressive now. And Kevin McCarthy.
Kevin McCarthy is from California here. I wouldn't have trusted him to fight at all. I would always have expected him to crumble. And if he's gained any courage in recently, it's definitely because of Trump. I'm not sure if that courage will stick.
I'm long enough to remember the Republican leaders back in the 1960s, and as discouraged as we are, as unhappy as we are about this Republican leader or that one, when you compare people in the 60s and the 70s, they are significantly better than a Howard Baker or a Bob Dole or Hugh Scott, some of these people who were really, really weak opponents to the Democrats there. Let me go back to your question about what happened. I said it was COVID-19, the mail-in ballots, etc. Something else. Republicans never win national elections unless the issues are nationalized around conservative issues. And not until late in the election process did Republicans, Donald Trump, begin to nationalize the election, and that was with the third debate. It didn't really give the voters a tune they can whistle. And he's talking about Biden and Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and this and that, all the other issues out there. But he didn't. Reagan gave the voters two tunes to whistle. One was that communism is evil, and we're going to defeat communism. And the other one was government is not the solution, it is the problem. Government is too big, it taxes too much, governs too much.
Early Trump did give them something to whistle. He gave them Make America Great Again and Build the Wall. Yeah. And there was nothing. I mean, I remember going home to Ireland, and there was a 16-year-old girl, a daughter of a friend of mine, and I said, "We're going to make America what?" And she says, "Great again." And I says, "We're gonna build a wall." And we're gonna build what? And she said, "A wall." And I said, "Who's gonna pay for it?" And she said, "Mexico." And she's 16-year-old girl. I think she's a hairdresser now, right? I mean, she had no interest in politics, but she was able to sing Donald Trump's tune in a countryside area of Ireland. So, but there was no tune to sing this time around.
You're exactly right. He gave the voters in 2016 a tune they could whistle. Not so here.
So we're going to have, then it sort of looks likely that we're going to have a Biden, Harris, whoever presidency. What can we expect? What can we expect in that first term?
Ask me that question January 6, 2021, the day after the Georgia Senate races, because that makes all the difference in the world. If the Republicans win both of those seats, Biden will probably be able to implement about 30% of his agenda. If the Democrats win both those seats, he can implement 100% of his agenda. He can make sure that he legalizes 15 million illegal aliens, D.C. statehood, pack the Supreme Court. It goes on and on and on. All that can be prevented if Republicans have 52 votes in the Senate. So all year long, I and other conservatives have said, this is the ball game. This election is everything. Because if we lose here, there's two teams on the field. One's on the 20-yard line. But if the one that does not have the ball leaves the field, there's nothing between them and the goalpost. And that's the case that we're faced right now. If the Democrats win those Senate seats in Georgia, there's nothing between them and the goalpost. So America literally hangs in the balance in the Georgia January 5th election. And so I've been saying that all year long. And I also ask a question. If you believe what I just said, that America hangs in the balance on this election, are you acting like it? And everybody would say, oh, yeah, I'm doing. Well, so you gave $100 here. We were talking about America. Hangs in the balance here. Are you working 12, as I am, 14 hours a day? You're doing this and that, And, very few people really are acting like America hangs in the balance. But it really does on January 5th.
Yeah, and once America's gone, we've nowhere else to move to.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are realizing that this is it. Like this is the moment where it could all be lost. But are you hopeful? Are you feeling hopeful? Because normally, what's great about Richard is that you're always the optimist. You're always very optimistic. As long as we've known you, I mean, I remember. Yeah, and more recently, obviously, with Trump's presidency, you'd never been more optimistic, more hopeful. Are you still as hopeful, as optimistic as ever?
I am, but we should not let our guard down. But I'm cautiously optimistic that Republicans will win both seats. And I also think that this is going to be somewhat of a wake-up call here. I think the next 2 years between now and the November 2022 election, you're going to see conservatives really get energized. I know I'm going to double, triple the size of our company. We help bring grassroots marketing to the conservative movement, as you mentioned earlier, in the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s. But in the last 25 years, the left has run circles around conservatives in terms of outreach to the grassroots. At this time now, and for years now, the left has raised about 500% more money than the conservatives ideologically, and raised from 500% more donors. One liberal organization, Act Blue, has 13,200,000 liberals who have given them their credit card information. 13.
Wow.
I estimate that all of the conservative organizations in the country, unique donors, we have about 2.5 million. So we're just not competitive.
Is it more that, liberals are joiners? They're like, I want to be part of something, or it's no fundamental difference, no?
Nope, I think it's, we need a lot of things, as I said earlier. Number one, leadership, and today we need mostly new, younger leadership. In my opinion, and I know, as you know, and I know most all conservative leaders at the national level out there, and in my opinion, I love them, they're my dear friends, but 90% of them have low energy. The left had so much energy this last few years, you could almost cut it with a knife.
And by the way, that's something that Donald Trump, and you've just said that before, his energy, I actually came up with a thought when he was having his big events, his massive events. I was thinking it's almost like he eats up the vitriol, the hatred, and it's like his, whatever that is, like it's his secret elixir. It makes him stronger. A lot of people, if they were on the receiving end of being hated like that, it would break them. They just wouldn't be able for it. Relentlessly being called a Nazi, relentlessly being compared to Hitler. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't be able for it. He actually thrives on it. And actually, you're so right, because I always come away from meeting Richard or hearing Richard speak, and I say, oh, well, that was the youngest voice we heard at this particular event. Whatever event it is, you're always the youngest voice we hear. And I totally hear you on that. A lack of enthusiasm. And it's like that thing I said at the beginning, Richard, when we go and hear you speak, it's always like you're going to learn something totally new, something you hadn't thought of before, and it'll also be delivered in a very, very energetic way. Whereas an awful lot of those speakers that are at those conferences, I mean, it's a nightmare. It's like
I think one of
it's like, really, are we going to hear that same old all over again?
I think a lot of these leaders are happy in opposition. They're not. Obviously, they'd like to be in government or whatever, but they don't mind being in opposition because it means there's a place for them at the table. They get invited on ABC and NBC to discuss the latest issues of the day. But if they start going outside the reservation, then they get excluded. And that's what happened. Trump, he went outside, he took them on, he fought, And that's, you know, when people start to fight, it's because they're excluded from the mainstream media. And Trump was excluded, and lots of Republican leaders are not.
Well, you're exactly right. Trump was a fighter, and we haven't seen somebody like that ever before. And I was there during the Reagan administration, as you referenced. And Reagan, I loved Reagan, but he never fought like Donald Trump did.
Yes.
In all my almost now 60 years of working at the national level, it'll be 60 next year, that I've been attacked a whole lot. In the 1960s, the 70s, I was attacked regularly. ABC, NBC, New York Times, Time Magazine, Washington Post, just regularly. But all of the criticism, but it didn't bother me at all because, and I told my friends that I would meet with regularly, it doesn't, the attacks, if we let them get to us, they will win. And so, and if we prevail, nobody will remember the criticism, but if we lose, it doesn't matter. But anyway, all of my attacks, and they were massive for, 10, 15 years, as I was going around the mainstream media and helping to organize the conservatives, it all stopped within a few hours. Election night, November 1980. That's what Viguerie and friends have been up to. And so I told my, and the liberals had not done grassroots marketing. They'd relied on unions and the government and foundations for their money. And I told my friends, don't worry, it's taken me 20 years to learn how to do this. And it's going to take them 25 or 30 years because I'm smarter than they are. Not so. Within 5 years or so, the left caught up with the conservatives, and today they run circles around us. And we've talked about this, started to get talking about it a few minutes ago, but one reason why the issues are ours. For example, tax cuts. How much money can you raise to, on the idea of raising taxes, letting in million illegal aliens, packing the Supreme Court. It's amazing that they're able to raise the money they are because they've got really, really sharp people. I was doing a Zoom call last week with about 400 or 500 conservative marketers with my counterpart on the left, Roger Craver, and he's brilliant. But he has spawned a big industry out there on the left. As a general rule, there's lots of exceptions, but as a general rule, the best and brightest conservatives go into the private sector, not into the nonprofit sector. But if you're a young, starry-eyed liberal, you go into the nonprofit sector. And so conservatives, we own grassroots marketing, 60s, 70s, 80s, and that's changed now. And as I said, I'm doubling, tripling the size of our company. We're going to take this conservative cause and bring in millions and millions of new donors here very quickly and hopefully be competitive with the left once again.
Suddenly Ronald Reagan is becoming news again. So that guy, Rick Perlstein, who wrote the book Reaganland during the summer, and then you have Showtime have a 4-part documentary, which is, according to the Wall Street Journal, I haven't seen it, a blistering attack on Ronald Reagan's legacy. And, 2 questions to that. Why now? What's the sudden interest in Ronald Reagan now? What's the sudden urgency to destroy the legacy? What do you think's going on?
One thing that is going on, and I seldom hear conservatives talk about this. I was with, we won't mention the organization, but I was with a bunch of conservatives that you know very well this week, hundreds of them, and this was never really talked about, that we are genuinely, seriously in a civil war in this country. And it may turn hot here if the left gets carried away. It looks like they're moving in that direction. But we are in a civil war, and the left is serious about it. And you know as well as anybody in America that we were in a cultural war in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. We didn't know about it, and all of a sudden we wake up in the 90s, and, it's kind of hard to win a war you don't know you're in. Early on now, thanks to people like Michael Anton and Angelo Codevilla and others, they're calling our attention to the fact that we're in a civil war and we need to wake up. And that's part of it, to demonize people who are our heroes, who brought us into the competitive situation with elections. I remember lots of people in the 70s were saying we need to drop the word conservative. It's not popular. It's been demonized. Let's call ourselves something else. And some of us, and Ronald Reagan, number one, no, we are conservatives. And he made it popular. And liberals ran away from their name. They didn't want to be called liberals. They didn't want to be called progressives. And so they're trying to undo cancel culture. And they want to cancel our heroes out there. So I think it's important for conservatives to realize this is serious business. We're in a civil war, and it's not. And I think we're going to look back and see the 2020 election as the good old days, because it's going to get really, really mean out there, very tough. These people are serious, and they're coming after us conservatives.
So we're on to the last part of our podcast. So with every guest we have two additional questions that are kind of totally different, away from politics, away from all of that stuff. The first one is we ask people for a piece of art that's important to them, like a poem, like a play, like a movie, anything like that. And the second question we ask, and I think I'm very interested in this with you, Richard, because I know you have a big interest in food, and I know you've written a book about food, is a recipe that they are famous for and how they cook it. So starting with the piece of art.
I knew you were going to ask that question, and the first thing that comes to mind, I've got a print of it. I don't have the original, which is worth many, many millions, but a nice print of, what is it? The boating luncheon party, beautiful, and a very famous impressionist painter. I forget who it is now. But I'll be honest with you, that's a weakness of mine, that I'm too one-dimensional. And I spend, at my tender age, I spend 3 to 4 hours a day studying marketing. And I wish I were more, balanced. And I don't watch a lot of movies, unfortunately, but I would wish I did. But we're in such a dire situation now. I just don't feel I can spare the time. I want to help provide.
I understand.
leadership.
So what about the cooking? What do you cook, Richard, that you're famous for?
My heritage is Cajun. I'm 100% Cajun, and you only find most Cajuns are in South Louisiana. That's where my mother and father came from. Within hours of them getting married in 1929, they went to Houston, where I was born a few years later. And but from the time I was an infant, we would go back to Louisiana 2, 3, 4 times a year. And so I grew up with my mother's Cajun cooking. And my favorite dish, and which I'm fairly well known for among my family and friends, is gumbo. I love good chicken gumbo or shrimp gumbo. But I cook most Cajun dishes, etouffee or shrimp creole and all the good Cajun dishes. And you talked about health, nutrition. I wrote a health book about 10 years ago called How Conservatives Can Outlive Liberals. and I hope everybody reads it, of course.
Yes.
But anyway, my wife of 57 years, within a couple of years after we were married, we became health enthusiasts, so to speak. Some people would say health nuts. But we had a young daughter born a year after we were married, and she got, after a year of age, she got boils all over her body. And no doctor that we saw could help her. My wife's in a bookstore, and picked up a book by Adele Davis, who was a guru, big nutrition expert in those days. And anyway, read the book, started reading the book, brought it home, literally didn't go to bed that night, stayed up all night long reading the book, because Adele Davis said sometimes the deficiency in vitamin A causes boils. Drugstore opens 8 o'clock in the morning. She's there, buys a jar of vitamin A, gives it internally, and breaks the liquid capsule, puts it on each boil. 20 boils, go away, never return again. So at that moment, we said, we, not the president, not the pharmaceutical companies, not the doctor, is in charge of our health. And it's made a huge difference there. As I said, you said I'm 87 years old. I literally go 12, 14 hours a day and don't personally know anybody at any age, not a 20-year-old, 40-year-old, keeps up with me. Now I understand the president works more than me, but I don't know the president.
Yeah.
You're not standing over his shoulder.
Yeah. No, my God, that's a great recommendation. And it's funny because we were in Louisiana. We were just in Louisiana with the Robertson family, the Duck Dynasty people, last week, and they were watching them cooking etouffee and all of that.
Yeah. So, Rich, where can people find you? Conservative HQ, is that right?
Conservative HQ, and if they want to write to me at my initials, RAV, my company's initials, ATA, at AOL.com. ravata@aol.com, or at my conservative website, conservativehq.com.
So it's been really great talking to you, Richard. I'm sorry that it's virtual. We're long overdue a glass of wine, so I hope we can do that really soon.
Love that with two of my very favorite people. Thank you, Ann.
God bless.
Thanks,
Bye,
Richard.
Richard. See you.
All the best. Bye.
Well, that was great. I mean, it's always such a pleasure. Can you believe? I really hope. Here's what I wish for everyone who's listening. I wish all of us have that energy at 87, and I wouldn't mind having it now. Actually,
Yes.
Can I just say?
So yeah, he's very interesting, very instructive. You know, Trump is a fighter. We need fighters, and I think that is actually what he's right. That's what we need. We need someone who's willing to fight. And I'm scared. I see a lot of conservatives on TV at the moment, apparently fighting, but they love their Fox News clips. They love their YouTube moments. They love their congressional hearings.
They can use them when they go to the donor dinner.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know if they have the guts and
other things
and other
attributes that might help you in a fight.
Other male organs that help you in a fight.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I mean, it's vicious. Like you're accused by the New York Times of putting kids in cages, and you can look them in the face and say screw you. I mean, that takes real guts.
But I think basically everyone's eyes now are on Georgia, and Richard Viguerie is right about that. We might have to go to Georgia, so if you're out there in Georgia, let us know where you think we should go to in Georgia.
Yes,
before January, before these important Senate elections. I'm moving on from that because we're running out of time, because we got a big show today, but we're so happy that you guys have joined us, and I know we took a week away, but it was much needed and much appreciated. But when we were in Louisiana, in Monroe, Louisiana, with the Robertsons, I was kind of hoping, because after we recorded the podcast, I've always wanted to be sort of in the kitchen with Phil and in the kitchen with Miss Kay, and so actually we were invited to lunch, and we went back to their house. And now there's a lot of noise in the background of these videos, but I still think they're worth looking at. The first one we're going to look at Al Robertson. So Al, the night before, when we were having our election watch party, Al had cooked up a storm,
give a context. Al is the beardless one.
Al is the beardless one. You're going to see him now on camera. Well, actually, he's got a beard at the moment, of course. Don't forget. But he basically had made the night before a fabulous cream pie.
It's called cherry cream cheese pie. But I've taken her pie
and you've elevated it.
I've elevated
yes.
it. Which is what children should do. They should take it this generation to make it better.
With a wonderful pie crust. And I think pie crust is everything. Pie crust is everything. Let's listen to him telling you what he put in his pie crust. It's a great recipe.
You take as many pecans as you want, because you can have some extra, but you'll need about a cup for the pie crust. And so I put them out on a flat sheet. First I baste them in butter, melt butter, about a stick of butter, toss them in that, put them out on a sheet, put a little bit of salt on them, and a little bit of cayenne pepper, which is to me the secret, because you got a little bit of a sweet and a little bit of a kick.
Yeah.
So then you roast them for an hour on about 225, 250, low. So at the end of that, I take them and I put them in a bowl with some paper towels, just to kind of soak a little of that excess butter off. And then I lay them back out, put a little more salt on, a little more cayenne pepper, and then I crunch them all up in a chopper. So you take that, you put it in a bowl, you take a cup of vanilla wafers, crunch them up, put that in the bowl with the pecans, and then take 3/4 of a stick of softened butter. And then I put that in the oven for about 15 minutes on 350. And then you get a nice bake brown. And then I kind of reposition everything, let that cool, and then I put the middle of my pie, which is a can of Eagle brand milk, condensed milk.
Oh yeah.
And a cream cheese, one softened cream cheese, let it soften on its own, and a third a cup of lemon juice. And I mix all that together with a mixer, and then I pour that into my cool now pie crust, set it in the fridge. Last night was about 6 hours. And so
it was perfectly set.
I like it overnight. It's even better because it's even stiffer. So that's it. And then you get some fruit topping that you just kind of have on the side: cherry, peach, strawberry, whatever.
I heard talk about strawberries, but I never saw any last night. I just went. We never got the strawberries.
That is the cream cheese pie, and the crust is the key.
The crust is the key. Thank you so much.
If you don't want to work that hard, you can put it in a shortbread crust or a.
No, we want to work. No, we need to work that hard because it's that good. Thank you. Yum, 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 right? Really, really nice. The next one we're going to watch...
Of course, most people buy pie crusts now, don't they?
No, and by the way, he says that in the video. He said you could buy a pie crust, but you know what? That one made with those roasted pecans, very nice.
Oh, nice.
Or as Americans say, pecans. pecans. The next one we're going to watch Miss K make cocktail sauce. Watch Miss K make this cocktail sauce very, very quickly, and then she'll go, and she has to wait quite patiently because Phil is making the shrimp and he is very focused on that. So she stands there because he's the official taster. Let's watch this. So you put in some tomato ketchup, and then what you got?
Horseradish.
Horseradish.
You want a good bit. It's kind of put seed to it, but I can eat it.
That's hot.
Lemon juice.
Lemon juice.
Most things are measured, not this stuff. I just throw it together.
Okay.
And Worcestershire sauce.
Oh, we love Worcestershire sauce, yeah.
And then you know who the tester is?
Who's the tester?
Phil.
Ah.
It has to pass his inspection.
Perfect. So that was very good, and he obviously had a taste of her sauce. But now I kind of went back to Phil and asked him again to kind of show us how he cooks the shrimp, and he does it obviously, not obviously, but he does use peanut oil because it has.
Why does he use peanut oil?
Because it has a low, whatever they call it, a high burn rate or whatever. So basically, you can boil it up to a high temperature, and it doesn't burn.
Smoke.
But
Okay.
exactly, it doesn't smoke. Have a look at Phil. So what is it? It's in flour and what?
Egg wash. Beat up some eggs, and it's just egg and flour. Put the egg wash on them, 4 eggs, 5 eggs, beat them up, pour them over in it, roll them up, put the flour, put your little seasoning on later.
And put your seasoning on later. Yeah. Beautiful.
Now the tail is right up to here, so it's still a little hot, but try that, see what you think.
Oh, gorgeous. I just thought that was really nice, and I know there's a lot of sound in the background. And I'm showing a few photographs actually just from the end, because there's a whole lot of us sitting at the table having, by the way, which was gorgeous.
Yeah.
Fried shrimp, boiled shrimp. We had beautiful salad. We had étouffée.
We did have
which I got too late to get to see them making the étouffée, but really delicious. And we just hung out. Really, what a great family.
A great mornings. We did an interview with them. They did an interview with us. Then we went and ate that beautiful food and watched them cook. And then we all went to the airport. It was a nice way to go to the airport, actually. It really was.
What do you mean?
With that lovely food.
Oh no, having had the lovely food.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but because by the way, sorry, you guys can imagine, that the airport in Monroe isn't that big, and certainly by the time you've gone through security, there ain't nothing to have.
But also nowadays, and even the airport, I think we went through Dallas or wherever the heck we went through, food at the airport is just so limited now, but to get that nice, it's the perfect way to go to the airport.
But a lot of people, we got a lot of nice messages from people who discovered us because they saw us either on the Robertsons podcast, which is called Unashamed with Phil Robertson, either that or people saw us on our one, which they'd found us because of the Robertsons. Yeah. But anyway, the Robertsons are great, and we had such a really lovely time. And
let's go back there.
Let's go back. Yeah, we're totally coming back.
They're
hard to get rid of us.
TV watching in a pandemic.
Watching. Here's some recommendations and some not recommendations.
Yes.
So we saw The Crown. We watched
season 4.
Season 4. So The Crown just started this week, and basically it's season 4, and you can binge it. You can watch the whole thing. We watched 3 episodes in a row.
Your Majesty, I think we have enough respect for one another personally to ask ourselves some of the bigger questions, woman to woman. We are the same age after all.
Really?
Just 6 months between us.
Oh? And who is the senior?
I am, ma'am. My goal is to change this country from being dependent to self-reliant, and I think in that I am succeeding.
All I want is to be loved. It's all any of us want from you.
And here's my take, Phelim. Certainly for me, it wasn't as good as the previous seasons. I definitely think it wasn't as good as the previous seasons. And I think one of the problems is they don't know who to hate most.
Yes.
So they weren't sure if they hated the royals more than they hated Margaret Thatcher.
Yes.
But what they decided to do because of that was they decided to be equal opportunities haters.
That's
and they
right.
hated on all of them.
Yes.
In a real juvenile socialist
way.
A juvenile socialist kind of way. But also the couple of things that they did that I thought were pathetic. And, just pathetic and very Netflixy was, because they're such socialists at Netflix, Maggie Thatcher bad. Not only Maggie Thatcher bad, which you can kind of, whatever, you can think Maggie Thatcher bad, but Maggie Thatcher stupid? No, you can say a lot about her, but to call her stupid is ridiculous. So can I just say, back in the day, and by the way, one of our nice people who watch our podcast is a dear friend of mine that I met in Romania, who is a lady, an aristocrat from the UK. I won't say her name. And I went to visit her at her castle in the UK, let's say in the past.
was it a palace?
And can I just say, even me from Ireland, from Bundoran, I looked up all the information about what would happen if I went to a castle and how do you behave. What do you wear? What do you need to wear? And all that kind of thing. And it's obviously incredibly important to people. And that girl who's listening, our dear friend, will know that I had such fun with her father. And that actually we did spend a lot of time when we were in the castle discussing what people would wear for dinner. Should they wear casual? Should they wear black tie? Should they wear this? Should they wear that? So it's actually a thing. The idea, the mere thought that Maggie Thatcher wouldn't know what to wear when she visited Balmoral is ludicrous. And it's a cheap shot at... Now, the cheap shot part of it, and you can disagree with me, Phelim, is what they tried to do was they tried to make the royal family look
Snobbish.
rude.
Yeah,
Which, by the way, I think the royal family would prefer to be hung, drawn and quartered than to be described as rude. Now, you could describe them as all kinds of other things, and they'd take it. But the thing that they'd love to be
is manners.
Is manners. That's kind of the thing that they perfected, right? So the idea that they would embarrass the Prime Minister of Britain because she didn't bring the right clothes, and the idea that the Prime Minister of Britain, this incredibly brilliant woman, hadn't read a book and realised that if you go to Balmoral, you're going to go hunting. You're going to need to wear hunting gear. The idea that she came with no outdoor shoes, ludicrous.
No, but also they have a private secretaries that deal with all this. I know someone recently who became a lord or a lady or
we
whatever,
do know that,
or a baron or whatever.
Yes,
and there's a massive. They send you booklets about it. They tell you this is what you do, and they tell you how to choose your name and what the protocol is for choosing your name.
Yes,
Lord such and such of Buxley or Lord what do you call him of Finchley
of Highgrove,
High Wycombe and low altitudes or
whatever,
high standards and low Lord Haw of high standards and low places. But
something like that.
But they love. There are people whose job it is to do this.
And it's, by the way, and it's bull. Sorry, I'm calling BS on that.
Yes.
So that was pathetic and juvenile. And I'm not finished, Phelim, and then you can tell me what you think. The other problem I think that they have with the series is that there are no heroes anymore. So in the past, the Queen was a hero, and she was great, by the way. And she was actually depicted very positively and came across really well. And I think you need your heroes. She was depicted very well. Somebody else, I'm trying to think. Oh, obviously, actually, Mountbatten was depicted very well in the past, etc. And you like that, and it's very nice. And I think the fact that this series has no heroes, I think you suffer for the absence. The other thing that I think is extraordinary is there's a moment in this one of the episodes, in the first 3 episodes, where Princess Margaret,
the Queen's sister
speaks to the Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, and she's really wise.
That's right.
And she gives her wisdom. And I'm thinking, the one thing...
And then she speaks to the whole family as wise
absolutely,
as well.
But the one thing that I think Princess Margaret was famous for was not being wise. And I'm just going to go out there on a limb on that one. The other problem, and I think Phelim will take over here, the other problem that I had with it is that obviously this series deals with...
I just want to talk about one thing that before we come to that last point. Apparently in the next episode, they talk about South Africa. There's a clash between the Queen. We haven't seen this.
Oh, well, let's not talk about that yet, because we can talk about that next week.
Oh,
and I don't think you should talk about stuff we haven't seen. I think we should don't.
Okay.
So the other criticism I have is that they do deal in this new season. They deal with the assassination of Lord Mountbatten, who was killed by the IRA in Mullaghmore, County Sligo, which is where Phelim and I have our home. Our Irish home is there, very close to all our relatives. And beautiful, beautiful village, highly recommend. And by the way, we should all go there together one of these days.
And you can Airbnb there as well.
And you can Airbnb there if you were wanting to do that.
If you look up Mullaghmore Oasis on Airbnb.
That'd be the place to stay. But here's the thing that's interesting is that instead of going to Mullaghmore and filming in Mullaghmore, and Mullaghmore is stunning, and I'm just throwing up some photographs there to give you an idea of how beautiful it is. Bizarre to me that they went and shot somewhere else. And I think, I don't know why. But you had other issues with the Mullaghmore stuff, Phelim.
I did. Well, I mean,
with the assassination of Lord Mountbatten.
Well, I felt
by the IRA.
Well, I felt also. I mean, I suppose I can see their point of not wanting to go to Mullaghmore. It's probably in bad taste or whatever.
Why? It's kind of weird. No, because they showed a place called Mullaghmore.
I suppose what they should have done was an establishing shot of Mullaghmore, but I don't think the locals would really want to be reminded too much. Have 5 days of filming there.
Maybe. But I think they could have done B-roll anyway.
Yes, they could have. So what were my thoughts about Mullaghmore?
What was your thoughts of the way they treated the IRA?
There was a voiceover. Yeah, again.
If anything, I thought that the IRA was kind of. I think they were soft on the IRA.
Well, of course, because it's this 1980s. As I say, suddenly the Crown. What was you said? They're juvenile and kind of socialist, and this IRA thing was very juvenile and very socialist, and it was like, I got a great line. So there's this. I mean, it's a terrible line, right? So on the same day that Lord Mountbatten was killed. 18 soldiers were also murdered
at Warren Point,
blown up at Warren Point, and there's a joke, or there's a song that people sang and was on walls as I was growing up, and it's reference to Bloody Sunday. 13 people were killed on Bloody Sunday, and the song is 13 dead and not forgotten. We got 18 and Mountbatten. Look away. Look away.
This is his people.
Look away, Dixie. So
this is his people. By the way, and for people who don't know, Lord Mountbatten, who was the Queen's cousin, was assassinated in Sligo.
Yes.
In what year was it?
1979. So that is a dramatic line, a dramatic song. So they have this voiceover of this IRA guy, sort of explaining why they're going to assassinate Mountbatten, and he says 13 dead, not forgotten. We got 18 on Mountbatten, which is kind of shocking when you hear it if you hadn't heard it before. But then 2 minutes later, he repeats the line.
I have no problem with him repeating the line.
And I'm thinking, like,
no, I have no.
But I mean, it's this kind of simplistic and very interesting. A lot of the footage they use to show Britain in chaos in the 80s in the trailer is footage of Northern Ireland in the 60s and 70s. So again, the footage they used to attack Thatcher, it's slightly off tangent. The footage they used to attack Thatcher has nothing to do with Thatcher. In fact, Thatcher is coming in to clean up that mess. And one other point was where they kind of chicken out was when Margaret Thatcher phones Queen Elizabeth to sympathise on the death of Lord Mountbatten. She says, "I am going to ruthlessly hunt down and exterminate the IRA. There will be no succour given, no mercy." And by the way, Margaret Thatcher did. She then launched a shoot to kill policy, etc., etc. People were shot unarmed and armed, but it was shoot to kill, no arrests. And it's quite obvious that's what she's saying. And you have the Queen listening to this and the Queen listening to this, and then she stops speaking, and you look at the Queen, and next thing they flick to another scene, and the Queen never says, "Don't do that" or "do that," right? So they don't. I don't know. They must have. I think they were cowardly. I think they didn't want. Did they want the Queen to say, "Don't take revenge on"?
She's not meant to, right?
Well, this was a personal condolence phone call.
I didn't have a problem with that.
Well, what did the Queen feel about the assassination of her dear friend Lord Mountbatten, personally and politically? How did she feel that the IRA needed to be stopped? Did she feel they needed to be negotiations?
Well, I think the whole idea, Phelim, now actually, I'm disagreeing with you here now, is the whole idea about the royal family is that they don't have public positions, and in fact, it's one of the big things that's hard on them.
I would agree.
That they're not allowed to do that.
But this is the Crown. This is the personal behind the political facade. So personally, how did she feel? And we never get to hear that. We never get to hear anyone's personal or even political opinion about
the IRA,
about what happened, except they're upset. So
we're not huge fans, but you know what? We're going to watch the whole lot of it anyway because we have a pandemic.
And I'm going to watch
more TV than we should.
I'm going to watch the South Africa episode. I bet. Okay, let me make a prediction. I haven't seen it yet. They're going to make a prediction that Thatcher is going to be a racist who supports the South African regime because she's a racist.
Let's watch it. And then I would recommend The Missing.
Do you know the name Alice Webster?
The British girl. She was abducted in 2003.
Yesterday. She came back.
I can't believe it. My little girl. I promise promised I would find out what happened to their daughter.
I can't stay here.
Don't watch season 1, only watch season 2, because you remember the last time I said season 1 is just who can watch. You can. I actually think there should be a rule. There should be. It's like an unspoken rule. I think it actually is an unspoken rule. I think it's an unspoken rule in the world of entertainment that you can't have anything bad happen to a child that doesn't have a happy ending. So if something bad happens to a child, it still has to have a happy ending. Something good has to happen to the child at the end. Something bad, you can't. Maybe it's just a pandemic, but I can't have anything bad happen to children. I just can't. So, but season 2, I would recommend of The Missing, and I think actually, if you haven't seen The Missing, just start at season 2. Then the other thing we wanted to very briefly mention, was 90 Day Fiancé the Other Way, which is the thing that has helped us, saved us through the pandemic, and we're very grateful to our friend Ali who recommended that. And you remember the premise of that? It's where foreigners
come to America,
fall in love with an American, and the American they come to America. They have 90 days. They have a 90-day visa, and if they don't get engaged or whatever, or married in the 90 days, then they have to go back. But there's another part of it called 90 Days Fiancé the Other Way, and one of the couples is Brittany, and Brittany lives in Florida, and she is a party type of girl, and she has her boobs hanging out, and she wears very little clothing, and she's very fun and likes her alcohol. But she has fallen in love with Yazam, who lives in Jordan and who is a devout Muslim.
And his family are even devouter.
Even more devouter. And yes. I just say, I think it was all very amusing until it's become very unamusing, and we're actually rather concerned, not actually about Brittany really, although we are now concerned about Brittany because Brittany's back in Jordan right now, but we're especially worried about Yazam, whose father has said on tape, and they filmed this, and you have to wonder about the ethics of this, where his father said, I'm going to murder him.
Yes.
And you're thinking, oh, this isn't that funny anymore. This isn't funny at all, actually. Yes. And now Brittany has gone over. She's had too much to drink. She's wearing inappropriate clothing, and she is in Jordan.
Yes.
So I hope for everyone's sake it all works out really nicely.
And you know the way Irish people might say, I'm going to kill him, right? Unless it's kind of the IRA, and we don't actually kill people that much. But in let's just say in Jordan, there is a...
it's not the first time a father would have killed a child of theirs
over an inappropriate relationship.
Over an inappropriate relationship. Because some of the other relatives in the family, and if you don't know this series, that probably it's too much inside baseball for you guys, but some of the other relatives of the family, the Muslim family in Jordan, have found Brittany's social media account and all the photographs she posts of herself when she's in Florida. So anyway, we're quite nervous about that situation. Obamagate movie, can I just say, has been hugely successful, and you guys are really kind, and we almost have 500,000 people have watched so far.
And we have been banned from Instagram again. So so they just keep banning us from Instagram, no reason. I mean, basically we've almost 500,000 viewers, and that's why they banned us from Instagram.
Too successful. So they, so please watch it on YouTube, the Obamagate movie. Go to obamagatemovie.com and watch and leave a comment and give us a thumbs up.
So lots of people are watching the podcast and listening to the podcast.
And we got really nice messages, really, really nice messages. I just looked the other day, and here's somebody who's written and said, bingo, with 2 exclamation points, and their name is Revizd is the name that they're calling themselves. I finally found a place where I can jot a comment rather than to speak into a microphone. I have been a fan since about March. I am so glad that I found you two who have spoken the truth about politics, the pandemic, the politics of the pandemic, and everything attached forthwith in your sharp-witted, common-sense Irish brogue.
Exclamation point.
Through your podcasts, I have been able to learn and appreciate that the United States is not the only country that has been affected, and infected by the COVID virus. The daftness, greed, and expectations of politicians and past politicians and media that the public will just follow like sheep. The weak-minded body and spirit of some people will allow them to be bulldozed, as already denoted with years of drug abuse, constant wordplay in the press, the desire to be spoon-fed anything free, etc. It's enough to make anyone throw up their hands and say, whatever. Please keep fighting it real so that we can feel like there is light at the end of the tunnel on this earth. At least there is always in the hereafter, she says. Wonderful. And then somebody else wrote and said, Wonderful Irish folks.
Yes, I read your Gosnell book and thought I shouldn't say I loved it, so I will say it was phenomenal. I think they didn't want to say they loved it because of the subject matter, but it's phenomenal, according to Gondud, who wrote in November the 9th. She says, I want to see the movie as soon as I can. I have been a fan of the Robertsons, the Duck Dynasty Robertsons for years, and think it's fantastic. You all are friends. Now I discover a new podcast to put on my list of favourites.
Thank you so much. And then somebody else, late to the party, Chase Casey, who wrote, late to the party, as is typical with my life, I'm late discovering this podcast, but wow, beyond excited to keep listening. Thanks to Unashamed for discovering you guys. Yes. So thank you very much to the Robertsons.
Now, talking of Obamagate. We need to read.
We're going to do some shout outs. So again, we want to start with our shout outs.
These are people who made Obamagate what it was. We raised $150,000. We couldn't have done it without you. People were so generous and so kind. So here, let's start.
We got Kevin in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Thanks so much, Kevin.
We got Carolyn in Scottsdale, Carolyn in Scottsdale give twice, William in Baintree, Massachusetts,
Margaret in Town and Country, Missouri,
Ingrid in
Tiburon,
California,
Paul in Delaware, Ohio. We've got Liana in Richmond Hill, Ontario, Christopher in Petoskey, Michigan. We have Alicia in Santa Barbara, California, neighbour here of ours. Michael, Edwardsville, Illinois. We've got Brian in Surrey, British Columbia. We've got Mick Wenlock in Byers, Colorado.
We've got Richard in Rancho Mirage, California. We've got Jane in Los Angeles, California.
Oh, yes.
Anne has just flicked it forward. We've got Carl in Singapore.
Hi, Carl in Singapore.
We've got a friend in Singapore.
And we've got a very good friend in Singapore, Carl. You should meet our friend in Singapore.
Yes.
Anyway.
Mary Ellen in Sudbury, Massachusetts.
Terry in
Brawley, California. Edward in Prentice Greens, Alberta. Marcia in Huntersville, North Carolina. Kristen in San Jose, California. Shirley in Hagerstown, Maryland. And then we've got Ron in Tehachapi, California. Lillian in Playa del Rey, California.
Oh, hello, Lillian in Playa del Rey,
just
neighbour of ours.
Just down the road.
Yes, we got Jay in Alexandria, Virginia. We've got Michael in Chicago, Illinois. We've got Mary Ellen in Sudbury, Massachusetts. We have Assunta in Saratoga Springs, New York. We've got Dan in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We've got William in North Bend, Oregon.
Don't forget, all these people funded the Obamagate movie. Thank you so much. If you do want to help us still with our projects, go to unreportedstoriesociety.com
and give what you can.
Give what you can.
Carol G. in San Diego, California. We have Elizabeth in Scottsdale, Arizona. We've got Leanna in Richmond Hill, Ontario. We've got Alan in Kingsville, Ontario. Chris in Kingston, Ontario. Stella in Fort Valley, Virginia. Michael in Brookfield, Massachusetts. We have Brian in Hamilton, Ontario. Doug in Redwood Meadows, Alberta.
And Miroslav in Pickering, Ontario. Grayson in Bedford, Virginia. Leanna in Richmond Hill, Ontario. Stephen in Los Angeles, California.
Hi, Stephen. How are you?
Hi, Stephen. Manuel in Phoenix, Arizona. Robert in St. Augustine, Florida. Richard in Rancho Mirage, California.
Hi, Richard.
And George in New York, New York.
And we have Mary in St. Charles, Illinois. We have Cara DeWitt in Michigan, right?
Yes.
And we have G in Perth,
Great Britain.
Oh,
we know who that is.
Oh, we have G in Perth. We know who you are.
Yes.
Yes, we do. We have Michael in Sparta, New Jersey.
And we have Michael in Boole, Idaho. And we have
Anthony in Greensboro, North Carolina. We have Laura in
Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. If we're mispronouncing this, let us know.
Very good in Cuyahoga Falls. We have Andy in Midlothian, Virginia. We have Rick in Twin Falls, Idaho. We have Peter in Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan. We have Chris in
Alabama. There's a town called Arab. And we'll wrap this up now. Greg and Martin, RD2. Oh, someone told me this RD2.
Oh, yes. Oh, we know what that is. That means you're on an Air Force base. So can we just say... Military base. Greg, can we just thank you for your service? That's Greg Martin.
No, Greg in Martin.
Oh, Greg in Martin, actually. And he's on an Air Force base. And so we wish you the very, very best,
And
Greg.
John in Goodyear, Arizona. Sabina in Richmond, California. And finally... Peter in Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan.
Thanks so much, guys. Thank you. We'll see you the next time.
Yes, thank you. And yes, don't forget, you can listen to the Daily Virus every day on the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And this is the Ann Phelim Scoop, which is also available on podcast, but also available on YouTube if you like looking at us.
And please leave a comment.
Thank you. Bye.